How many laughs does it take to forget that time is passing us by? Three's Company, with its breezy misunderstandings and bedroom farces, felt like a show that could live forever. Jack Tripper dancing across the living room floor, Chrissy's breathy naivete, Janet's eye rolls, and the ever-watchful stare of their landlords. It all seemed like one endless rerun of joy. But time doesn't care about punchlines. Behind the bright colors and canned laughter of ABC's beloved sitcom lay a cast of actors whose real lives were often far more complicated than the scripts they delivered. Premiering in 1977, Three's Company broke taboos with a wink. A man pretending to be gay so he could live with two women? In the late 70s, that was enough to stir moral panic and ratings gold. Audiences tuned in not just for the risque setup, but because they felt like they were part of the gang. We knew the kitchen. We knew the couch. We knew every beat of Jack's klutzy charm. But what we didn't know then, and what few talk about now, is what happened to the stars once the laughter faded. Some chased stardom, only to collide with scandal. Others struggled silently through illness, heartache, and creative frustration. And a few disappeared into the shadows altogether, remembered only by die-hard fans and the fading glow of syndication. 16 cast members, some mainstays, some fleeting but memorable, have since passed on. Their stories are full of brilliance and heartbreak, triumph and tragedy, moments of glory and years of quiet battles far from the spotlight. What really happened to the stars of Three's Company? What secrets did they carry behind those studio lights and rehearsed smiles? And why do we still feel so close to them, even now, decades later? This is not just a tribute. This is a reckoning with time, memory, and the true cost of making the world laugh. Stay with us as we remember the 16 souls who once walked through that iconic apartment door and never left our hearts. John Ritter, Jack Tripper, 1948 to 2003. He was the heartbeat of Three's Company, the magnetic center of every laugh and stumble. John Ritter didn't just play Jack Tripper. He was Jack Tripper, so effortlessly that it's easy to forget just how much work, pain, and talent went into making comedy look that light. Born in Burbank, California in 1948, Ritter was the son of legendary country singer and film cowboy Tex Ritter, a man who wanted his son to study law, not chase punchlines. But John had other plans. After dabbling in psychology at USC, he pivoted to theater arts and never looked back. By the time Three's Company premiered in 1977, Ritter was 29, still relatively unknown despite turns on the Waltons and guest roles in network dramas. But his casting as Jack was lightning in a bottle. The physical comedy, the awkward sexuality, the frantic energy, it all clicked. Viewers loved him, critics couldn't look away, and Emmy voters eventually gave him the crown, Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. But behind the scenes, things weren't always as harmonious. When co-star Suzanne Summers was fired over a pay dispute, Ritter reportedly sided with the producers, a decision that led to a decades-long silence between the two, only broken in a bittersweet phone call just before his death. Ritter's career after Three's Company was a mix of highs and missed chances. His turn in Hooperman earned him acclaim, and he showed surprising dramatic depth in Billy Bob Thornton's Sling Blade. Kids knew him as the voice of Clifford the Big Red Dog, while older audiences saw his late resurgence in 8 Simple Rules. It was on that very set in 2003 that tragedy struck. Complaining of chest pains, he was misdiagnosed with a heart attack. The truth was far deadlier, an aortic dissection. Hours later, he was gone, just days shy of his 55th birthday. His death shocked Hollywood, devastated fans, and changed awareness around heart health forever. John Ritter didn't live long, but he lived loud, funny, and full of heart. And every time we hear a laugh track echo from that Santa Monica apartment, we remember, he's still making us smile. Suzanne Summers, Chrissy Snow, 1946 to 2023. She lit up the screen with every giggle, every hair flip, every hilariously wrong conclusion. As Chrissy Snow, Suzanne Summers redefined the dumb blonde trope by making her both lovable and iconic. But off-screen, she was anything but clueless. Born in San Bruno, California in 1946, Summers grew up in a volatile home with an abusive, alcoholic father. Her early life was shaped by fear and survival, but also by ambition. After becoming a single mother at 19, she turned to modeling and small acting gigs to support herself. In 1977, her break came when she was cast in Three's Company, joining John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt in what would become one of the most recognizable trios in television history. Summers' portrayal of Chrissy turned her into a cultural phenomenon. She quickly became a fan favorite, her popularity soaring past even her co-stars. But by the show's 5th season, tensions behind the scenes began to surface. Summers, recognizing her star power, pushed for a raise. At the time, she was reportedly earning $30,000 per episode and sought an increase, aiming for compensation more in line with her male counterpart. The negotiations failed. What followed was one of the most public contract disputes in television history. Her role was drastically reduced, and she was eventually let go from the show. The fallout was brutal. She was isolated on set, filmed separately, and essentially erased from the cast dynamic. After her departure, she pivoted toward a different kind of fame. Summers became a savvy businesswoman, transforming her image into a health and wellness empire. Her promotion of the Thigh Master turned into a pop culture moment and a multi-million-dollar business. She also authored best-selling books and became a vocal advocate for hormone therapy and alternative medicine, often courting controversy for her views. Despite a decades-long estrangement with her co-stars, Summers later reconciled with Joyce DeWitt in 2012 during an emotional reunion. Her relationship with John Ritter was repaired shortly before his untimely death in 2003. Suzanne Summers passed away on October 15, 2023, one day before her 77th birthday, after a long battle with breast cancer. In her final years, she remained unapologetically herself, bold, driven, and never content to be just another punchline. Chrissy Snow may have been her breakout role, but Suzanne Summers wrote her own story and refused to let anyone else end it for he. Don Knotts, Ralph Furley, 1924 to 2006. By the time Don Knotts swaggered into Three's Company in his colorful leisure suits and nervous energy as Ralph Furley, he was already a legend. But what he brought to the show wasn't just comedic timing. It was a chaotic, magnetic weirdness that kept the series from collapsing after the Ropers left. Born Jesse Donald Knotts in 1924 in Morgantown, West Virginia, he grew up in modest circumstances during the Great Depression. It was a difficult childhood, but one that forged in him a hunger to entertain and an instinct for survival through laughter. He started out performing as a ventriloquist and later honed his craft in the Army's Special Services during World War II, entertaining troops across the Pacific. After the war, Knotts pursued acting in New York, and the role that changed his life came soon after, Deputy Barney Fife on The Andy Griffith Show. With jittery brilliance and impeccable timing, he turned the nervous sidekick into a television icon, winning 5 Emmy Awards. But by the 1970s, his career momentum had slowed. Disney comedies and regional theater filled the gap, until Three's Company brought him roaring back to primetime. Replacing the Ropers wasn't an easy task, but Knotts made the character of Ralph Furley his own. A swinging bachelor utterly out of step with the times, Furley was equal parts delusional, flamboyant, and heartbreakingly sincere. Audiences embraced him instantly, and his chemistry with John Ritter was electric. Off camera, the two became genuine friends, bonded by mutual respect and a shared love for physical comedy. Don Knotts continued working into his later years, from guest appearances to voice acting, always chasing the next good laugh. In 2006, he passed away at 81 from complications related to lung cancer and pneumonia. Just a few years earlier, he reunited with John Ritter in a guest spot on 8 Simple Rules, a quiet curtain call for 2 of television's finest. He didn't need grand gestures or big speeches. A wide-eyed stare, a squeaky protest, a flustered silence. That was Don Knotts. He made awkwardness into art, and television has never quite been the same without him. Norman Fell, Stanley Roper, 1924 to 1998. Stanley Roper wasn't just a landlord. He was a walking storm of passive aggression, cheapness, and sexual oblivion. And no one could have played him better than Norman Fell. With that signature deadpan delivery, suspicious glare, and the perfectly timed door slams, Fell turned what could have been a throwaway sitcom role into one of the most oddly lovable characters on television. But behind the comedic grumbling was a seasoned actor with a complex journey, and a sense of timing sharpened not by stand-up clubs, but by war and discipline. Born in Philadelphia in 1924, Norman Noah Feld served as a tail gunner in the Pacific during World War II before returning to study drama at Temple University. After the war, he trained at the prestigious Actors Studio in New York and carved out a long, steady career on stage and screen. He appeared in classics like The Graduate, Bullitt, and Ocean's 11, always as the dependable, if slightly gruff, supporting man. But it wasn't until 1977, in his 50s, that he found pop culture immortality as Mr. Roper. In Three's Company, Feld's Stanley Roper was the ultimate sitcom foil, a landlord who hated tenants, feared intimacy, and found every excuse to avoid his wife's affections. Yet somehow, the more he resisted affection, the more audiences adored him. His chemistry with Audrey Lindley as Helen Roper became so iconic that ABC spun them off into The Ropers in 1979. But the move was a miscalculation. The spin-off flopped, and by the time the network wanted to bring Feld back, the window had closed. Still, he never expressed bitterness publicly. Feld continued acting in small roles, lending his gravelly presence to shows and films throughout the 80s and 90s. In 1997, he made one last poignant appearance as Mr. Roper in an episode of Ellen, a quiet nod to the character that defined his career. Less than a year later, Norman Feld died from bone marrow cancer at age 74 at the Motion Picture and Television Country House in Woodland Hills. Norman Feld wasn't flashy. He didn't play to the camera, but he understood rhythm, restraint, and the subtle comedy of repression. As Stanley Roper, he left an imprint on television that no upgrade in rent or casting could ever replace. Audrey Lindley, Helen Roper, 1918 to 1997. Helen Roper could have been just another sitcom wife, frustrated, ignored, a punchline waiting for a laugh track. But thanks to Audrey Lindley, she became something more, a woman with sharp instincts, aching vulnerability, and just enough sass to flip every scene on its head. Stuck in a sexless marriage with the ever-clueless Stanley, Helen masked her loneliness behind colorful caftans, biting wit, and a deep yearning that never quite got fulfilled. Every time she threw him a look or delivered a line laced with irony, she wasn't just making us laugh. She was reminding us of how many women like her lived quietly on the margins, misunderstood and underestimated. Born in Los Angeles in 1918 to a showbiz family, Lindley didn't walk into fame, she worked for it. Starting as a stand-in and stunt woman during the 1940s, she made her way to the Broadway stage and built a formidable resume in television dramas and soap operas. Her reputation was that of a serious actress, not a sitcom player. So when she signed on to play Helen Roper in Three's Company in 1977, it was something of a left turn, but one that would define her legacy. Helen wasn't just the landlady, she was the subtext. Underneath every laugh was a subtle sadness, a suggestion of what it means to be an invisible woman, underestimated and overcompensating. Lindley imbued her with grace, longing, and a sharp sense of comic timing. The chemistry between her and Norman Feld was pure lightning. Passive husband meets assertive wife, and the power dynamic flipped nightly in front of millions. ABC took notice and spun the Ropers off into their own show in 1979. The Ropers struggled to find footing and was canceled after 2 seasons. Lindley moved on, returning to dramatic roles, including memorable performances in Cannery Row, Desert Hearts, and an unforgettable guest spot as Phoebe Buffrey's grandmother in Friends. Her range was enormous, an actress who could deliver slapstick one day and heartache the next. In 1997, while still actively working on shows like Sybil and Nothing Sacred, Audrey Lindley died from complications related to leukemia. She passed away with a script at her bedside, the mark of someone who never stopped creating, even at the end. Helen Roper wasn't glamorous. She wasn't young. But thanks to Audrey Lindley, she was unforgettable, a woman who saw through the nonsense, called it out, and made us laugh even as she broke our hearts. And Wedgeworth, Lana Shields, 1934 to 2017. She stepped into Three's Company with elegance, confidence, and a twinkle of mischief. As Lana Shields, and Wedgeworth played the glamorous neighbor next door, a confident, twice-divorced woman who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to ask for it. Her flirtatious pursuit of Jack Tripper turned convention on its head, especially in an era where sitcom women of a certain age were rarely allowed to be bold, let alone funny. Lana was different. She challenged expectations, and Wedgeworth played her with charm, wit, and just enough sparkle to stand out in every scene she was in. Born in Abilene, Texas in 1934, Wedgeworth trained at the University of Texas and later joined the renowned Actors Studio in New York. By the time she arrived on Three's Company in 1979, she had already won a Tony Award and built a reputation as a serious actress. But sitcom work was a new lane, and she handled it with grace. Still, her time on the show was unexpectedly brief. After just 9 episodes, she vanished from the cast with no in-universe explanation. The truth was quieter, but no less telling. Wedgeworth had reportedly asked to be released from her contract. The character of Lana, once promised as a major presence, had been gradually sidelined. Writers didn't seem to know how to integrate a strong, independent female character who didn't fit the usual formula. Rather than accept being phased out, she chose to walk away. Her departure didn't slow her down. In the years that followed, Wedgeworth found steady work in both film and television. She earned acclaim in Steel Magnolias, held a recurring role on Evening Shade, and continued working well into the 90s. Off-screen, she remained private, focused more on the work than the spotlight. And Wedgeworth passed away in 2017 at age 83 after a long illness. Her role on Three's Company was short, but she made it count. Lana Shields was funny, confident, and quietly subversive, and played her with the kind of quiet strength that doesn't fade, even when the script stops coming. Peter Mark Richmond, Reverend Snow, 1927 to 2021. In a show built on innuendo and misunderstandings, Reverend Luther Snow was the rare moment of stillness, serious, composed, and completely out of place in the Santa Monica chaos of Three's Company. Played with dignified restraint by Peter Mark Richmond, Chrissy Snow's father appeared in just a handful of episodes, but his presence was unforgettable. He was the man who stared down Jack Tripper's lies, disapproved with authority, and brought a wave of tension every time he walked through the door. Born Marvin Jack Richmond in Philadelphia in 1927, Peter Mark Richmond's path to acting wasn't immediate. He began as a licensed pharmacist, even practicing for a short time before pursuing his true passion. Trained at the Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg, Richmond built a decade-spanning career that included over 500 television appearances. From The Twilight Zone to Dynasty, Star Trek, The Next Generation to The Outer Limits, he was the kind of actor who didn't just show up. He left an impression. On Three's Company, his role as Reverend Snow added both weight and conflict. As Chrissy's father, he embodied moral rigidity, clashing against the apartment's freewheeling lifestyle. Off-screen, he was cast during a particularly volatile time. Suzanne Summers' contract dispute had put the production in a precarious spot, and when she left the show, so did his recurring role. Richmond never returned, though he later spoke fondly of the part, and of his admiration for Summers' comedic timing. Beyond acting, Richmond was a painter, playwright, and novelist, a creative force who saw the arts as a lifelong pursuit. He married once, had 5 children, and stayed active in the entertainment industry for over 6 decades. In 2021, he passed away peacefully at the age of 93 from natural causes. Peter Mark Richmond may not have been a regular on Three's Company, but his performance stood apart. In a cast full of comic excess, he brought gravity. And in a world of fast punchlines, he played the straight man perfectly, with grace, patience, and a stare that could stop Jack Tripper mid-sentence. William Pearson, Dean Travers, 1926 to 2004. Dean Travers wasn't just Jack Tripper's academic nemesis. He was every student's nightmare wrapped in a bow tie and disapproval. As the head of Jack's culinary school, William Pearson brought a sharp, gravelly edge to the sitcom's otherwise carefree world. His scenes were brief, but his presence loomed large, stern, unsmiling, and always a few seconds away from failing Jack out of school. In a show built on misunderstandings, Pearson's Dean Travers offered something refreshingly straightforward. He just didn't like Jack. And that made every appearance electric. Born in Brooklyn in 1926, William H. Pearson was a veteran character actor whose career spanned stage, film, and television. Before Three's Company, he was best known for playing Marco the Mailman in the Academy Award-winning film Stalag 17, 1953, a role he also originated on Broadway. That performance, laced with both toughness and humor, would become a hallmark of his work. He had the rare ability to play intimidating authority figures with just a hint of vulnerability, a balance that made his characters both memorable and believable. On Three's Company, Dean Travers was introduced in the show's early seasons and remained a recurring character through Jack's arc as a student. He was the kind of character who never cracked a smile, but always got laughs. Whether threatening to expel Jack or using him to impress donors, Pearson played him with a perfect mix of frustration and dry wit. Beyond the sitcom, Pearson appeared in a wide range of TV shows, from All in the Family to Different Strokes, The Jackie Gleason Show, and The Facts of Life. Though never a household name, he was a familiar face, a working actor who added weight to every scene he entered. William Pearson passed away in 2004 at the age of 78 due to respiratory complications. He left behind a legacy of subtle performances and a career built on consistency, reliability, and quiet brilliance. In a show full of exaggerated personalities and slapstick chaos, Dean Travers was the reality check. Thanks to Pearson's dry delivery and impeccable timing, he didn't just play the straight man. He elevated the comedy by grounding it. Paul Aninssley, Jim the Bartender, 1937 to 2013. He didn't need many lines to be remembered. As Jim the Bartender at the Regal Beagle, the show's go-to-watering hole, Paul Aninssley played a familiar face in the background of Three's Company, anchoring scenes where plots unraveled and punchlines landed. He wasn't the star, but he was always there, polishing glasses, offering a quick reaction shot, or slipping in a dry comment that reminded you someone behind the bar was actually paying attention. Born in 1937, Aninssley was already a seasoned stage performer before stepping onto the set of Three's Company. In fact, he originated the role of King Herod in the first Broadway production of Jesus Christ Superstar in 1971, bringing down the house night after night with his show-stopping solo. His voice, presence, and theatrical instincts made him a standout in musical theater, but television gave him something different, a quiet kind of recognition. Between 1977 and 1980, Aninssley appeared in over a dozen episodes of Three's Company. As Jim, he was part of the scenery, but not invisible. The Regal Beagle wasn't just a bar. It was a refuge where friendships deepened, secrets slipped out, and misunderstandings turned into chaos. Jim stood behind the bar through all of it, a steady hand in a sitcom that thrived on madness. Years later, Aninssley admitted in interviews that the role didn't pay much. He was often background, often uncredited, but producers kept bringing him back because he fit. He gave the space authenticity. He made the bar feel real. Outside of Three's Company, Aninssley made appearances in shows like Wings, Babylon 5, and The Bold and the Beautiful. But his heart remained on stage, where he performed in Les Miserables, The Pirates of Penzance, and more. He died in 2013 at the age of 67 from heart-related complications. Paul Aninssley wasn't meant to steal scenes. He was meant to support them. And he did it flawlessly, giving Three's Company one of its most grounding elements. A bartender who, without saying much, always seemed to understand exactly what kind of show he was in. Brad Blazedell, Mike the Bartender, 1949 to 2018. When Paul Aninssley exited Three's Company, the Regal Beagle didn't close. It just got a new bartender. Brad Blazedell stepped in as Mike, bringing a fresh but familiar presence to the show's favorite hangout. Like his predecessor, Blazedell's role was understated. He wasn't the center of any plot twists, but his steady presence made the bar feel lived in, real, and consistent. He appeared during the later seasons, quietly blending into the rhythm of the show's established chaos. Born in 1949, Blazedell was a journeyman actor whose resume spanned both television and film. He had supporting roles in Matlock, ER, Criminal Minds, The Jeffersons, and The Mentalist, among many others. His versatility kept him working steadily for decades. Off-screen, he was also a singer and an active member of the Screen Actors Guild, serving 2 terms on its board. Brad Blazedell passed away in 2018 from cancer at the age of 69. While his time on Three's Company was limited, he carried the spirit of the regal beagle forward, a reminder that sometimes, even the quietest characters help hold the whole set together. Mickey Deems, various roles. 1925 to 2014. Mickey Deems wasn't a series regular on Three's Company, but his face kept popping up, always in a new disguise. From playing Mr. Harwood and Mr. Hubbard to a singing telegram man and a maitre d', Deems became one of the show's most recognizable recurring guest actors. His comedy instincts were razor-sharp, and even in one-off appearances, he brought a distinct energy that made every bit memorable. Born in 1925, Deems had a long career in both comedy and music, with early success on stage and television dating back to the 1950s. He also appeared in the spin-off The Ropers and was known for his role in the cult TV show Mac and Meyer for Hire. He passed away in 2014 at age 88. Though his roles on Three's Company were small, his comedic timing left a lasting impression. A true character actor who could do a lot with very little. Rod Colbin, Mr. Hadley. 1923 to 2007. Rod Colbin brought quiet authority and sly humor to his appearances on Three's Company, most notably as Mr. Hadley, Cindy Snow's boss in one episode, and Janet's boss in another. He also played Helen Roper's brother-in-law in the Roper spin-off. Though his roles were brief, Colbin had a way of making even small parts feel grounded and distinct, adding a touch of realism to the show's otherwise zany atmosphere. Born in 1923, Colbin had a long career in television and film, with appearances on shows like The Twilight Zone, Murder, She Wrote, and Dallas. He was also a skilled fencer, and even taught stars like James Dean and Marlon Brando how to handle a sword. Beyond acting, he was once Katharine Hepburn's personal masseur, just one of many fascinating side notes in a truly eclectic life. Colbin passed away in 2007 after a series of strokes. His contributions to Three's Company may have been brief, but his versatility and professionalism made him one of the show's most reliable guest stars. Sheila Rogers, various roles. 1924 to 2003. Sheila Rogers was one of those familiar faces you might not name, but always recognized. On Three's Company, she played several minor but memorable roles over the years, most notably the mother of the baby Janet often babysat, and a recurring nurse in multiple episodes. Her last appearance was as Marge Andrews, showing her quiet range as a reliable background performer who made the sitcom world feel fuller and more believable. Born in Brooklyn in 1924, Rogers began acting in the early 1960s with appearances on shows like The Donna Reed Show, My Three Sons, What's Happening?, and The Ropers. She also acted in the cult classic film The Kentucky Fried Movie in 1977, proving her comedic chops beyond television. Rogers passed away in 2003 in Los Angeles. Though rarely in the spotlight, she was part of the ensemble magic that made Three's Company so enduring, one of the many unsung character actors who gave sitcoms their texture. Dawn Porter, Fremont Tripper. 1912 to 1997. Dawn Porter made a single but standout appearance on Three's Company as Fremont Tripper, Jack's charming yet scheming uncle. In the episode, Fremont nearly gets the roommates evicted after writing bad checks and roping them into one of his shady schemes. Porter's portrayal brought a roguish charm that contrasted hilariously with Jack's frantic attempts to clean up the mess. Born in 1912, Porter had a prolific career in film, television, and stage that began in the 1930s. He was best known for playing the father in the original Gidget series and appeared in popular shows like Green Acres, The $6 Million Man, and Dallas. A seasoned professional, he also directed episodes and had an impressive run across multiple decades in Hollywood. Dawn Porter passed away in 1997 at the age of 84. His brief stint on Three's Company served as a perfect showcase of his comedic instincts and on-screen charisma, proof that even a one-episode role can leave a lasting impact. Irene Tedro, Aunt Martha. 1907 to 1995. Irene Tedro appeared in Three's Company as Aunt Martha, Helen Roper's elderly relative, in an episode laced with classic misunderstanding. When Jack tells his friend Larry he's dating an older woman, Aunt Martha's surprise visit leads to chaos and one of the show's more memorable slapstick gags, Larry getting slapped square in the face. Tedro's comedic timing and dignified presence brought a sharp contrast to the usual youthful frenzy of the show. Born in 1907 in Oklahoma, Tedro had a distinguished career on stage and in television. She was a founding member of the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, appeared on Broadway, and had recurring roles in Dennis the Menace, The Rockford Files, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show. She was also a radio veteran and a respected Shakespearean actress. Tedro passed away in 1995 after a stroke, at age 87. Her role on Three's Company was brief, but her legacy as a classically trained performer who could thrive in both drama and comedy speaks volumes about her talent. Georgianne Johnson, Mrs. Tripper, 1926 to 2018. Georgianne Johnson brought warmth and subtle authority to her role as Mrs. Tripper, Jack's mother, in a single Three's Company episode titled Extra, Extra. In it, she arrives unannounced just as a fabricated news article paints Jack as a swinging playboy, leading to awkward family confrontations and Jack scrambling to maintain his carefully constructed image. Johnson played the role with quiet strength, anchoring the scene with maternal sincerity amidst the sitcom chaos. Born in 1926 in Iowa, Johnson's career began in the early 1950s and spanned over 5 decades. She appeared in numerous television shows including Mr. Peepers, The Jeffersons, Archie Bunker's Place, and Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, where she portrayed the title character's mother. Her background also included work in commercials and soap operas, and she built a reputation for playing elegant, emotionally grounded women. She passed away in 2018 at the age of 91. Though her appearance on Three's Company was brief, Johnson's poise and presence gave the episode a touch of realism, a reminder that even in a sitcom, moms can still steal the scene. They made us laugh until our sides ached. They turned misunderstandings into masterpieces and door-slamming farce into television history. Three's Company may have been wrapped in bright colors, suggestive jokes, and zany plotlines, but behind all that was a cast of deeply human, deeply talented actors, many of whom are no longer with us. From the irrepressible energy of John Ritter to the quiet grace of Georgianne Johnson, each of the 16 performers we've remembered left their own imprint on a show that still lives in reruns, memes, and memory. Some found lasting fame. Others quietly drifted into other roles or other lives. Some died suddenly, others after long, private battles. A few were let go too soon, on screen and off. But whether they were at the center of the chaos or holding down the background with quiet strength, they were all part of what made Three's Company more than just a sitcom. They gave it weight. They gave it rhythm. They gave it heart. So next time you hear that familiar theme song, come and knock on our door. Pause for a moment. Think about the talent it took to turn that little apartment in Santa Monica into something unforgettable. Behind the pratfalls and punchlines were actors fighting for respect, navigating fame, and doing their best to bring laughter into our living rooms, often while carrying pain no script ever captured. If these stories moved you, don't let them fade. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and join us as we continue to revisit the legends of television's golden past. Because for every laugh track, there's a life behind it, and some stories are too important to be left untold.